Welcome to Cosmic Comics, Games and Collectibles, your zen of geekism. We carry comics old and new, magazines, toys, games like Pokemon, Magic, D&D. Want Godzilla, Ultraman, Star Trek, Ninja Turtles, Funko Pops? You'll find it all here. Shop our Cosmic Sound Room and pick up a record or two. Enjoy our Comic Coffee Lounge with a cup of Sasquatch coffee or a delicious menu item while geeking out over a super cool movie on our big screen. Come by and say hello to Maui. Cosmic Comic, Games and Collectibles. Superman loves us, and so will you.
What comic books are you reading?
We're reading all kinds of comic books, Kelly. We're reading even some mainstream books, but fewer of them. As much as we hear that that comics are dying, it's true and it's not. The industry has been better, but the industry is just a distribution method. The art form has never been more blossomed than it is in these past few years. It is a renaissance of comics creators coming to the fore, coming out of nowhere, coming directly to readers because they couldn't go through the established system of the mainstream publishers. And not all of that was because of lack of talent. Granted, they've only got so many books they can publish. They can't bring everybody. So I'm not going to fault them too much. They could still do better with what they got. But besides the point. As far as the crowdfunded independent comics go, we have some really good ones, and one of them is here tonight, and we'd like to bring Mr. Mike Murphy to the show with LONGSHADOW. Mike, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Doing fantastic. How are things going in the chibi world?
They're going good. We had to sit most of last year out because we were kind of in production hell. Some things went wrong with behind the scenes with a couple of our titles, but we've got The Gods Fear Me out the door. We're running the leftover campaign for that, and we're going to be heading into fulfillment again on Deepwell by March.
Excellent. So, books, promises made, promises kept. Books are being shipped.
That's what we do.
Yeah, printer issues because everybody's having printer issues. It seems like.
Yeah, well, yeah, that was part of it. That was definitely part of it.
Yeah, I don't know why we had paper shortages, but then again, I don't know why we had toilet paper shortages or meat shortages or bread shortages. Here it's the truck drivers all have to be, vaccinated or something, and they're not all, therefore they can't all drive.
Right.
Because, nobody needs a vaccination more than a guy who sits alone in a 5x12 cube all day with no human contact. Mm-hmm. But another show for another time.
Exactly. Yeah.
So tell us, this is a bit of a departure, it looks like, from what we've seen before, because you've always been sort of like very, very much a spaghetti Western kind of thing. Even with The Gods Fear Me has been more of a Western, but, in a different genre. Tell us about LONGSHADOW.
Sure.
And while you do that, I'll bring the video up because I forgot to preload it.
Oh, no problem, man. Sure. So yeah, let me run through the pitch really quick. LONGSHADOW is your new favorite detective ogre for hire, solving mysteries and slaying monsters across the kingdom of Elos. In this first volume, LONGSHADOW is hired by a mysterious woman with mystical abilities to travel out to the forgotten lands of Old Country and hunt down the Prince of Echoes, a vile creature leaving only death and destruction in its wake. This book is a throwback to the days of pulp, un-PC action-adventure epics filled with violent action, gorgeous women, deadly men, and thrilling exploits that kept pages turning for years back in the day. Comicsgate has ushered in the return of fun to both reading and publishing and storytelling, and I wanted to pay homage to the genre and format that started it all. LONGSHADOW is 112 pages featuring black and white spot illustrations by Jeff Lasley, who's also our cover artist. And the base book is $20. There's also a prequel novella I have for all of our campaigns, just like I do with all of our campaigns. And that will come in at 36 pages, also with spot illustrations. Even if you're not traditionally into prose writing, I hope that you'll give this a shot, because there's something about pulps that kind of transcends just prose, thanks to the accompanying illustrations. And it's back, and we'd love to have everyone along with us for the ride.
Yeah, so there is a resurgence, small resurgence in interest in pulp. I say small because I only know of two people who are doing it, you being one of them. The other one being Wyatt Holliday was doing
Right.
his pulp book. So uh, it's almost like, we've gone back and said, okay, let's go back to the beginnings of comics and do stuff. Well, let's go back even further and go to the pulps that spawned the things for comics. Like, when we had the Shadow and we had Doc Savage,
Hmm.
all of that in the pulp industry. Um, what is your interest in pulps? Why did you decide to go back and actually do a pulp? Because I don't know what the market is. Did you check and see, hey, yeah, people will read this?
It seems, you are correct. Like, it seems like for whatever reason there's something in the zeitgeist, and I think I don't think it's going to be a major format or anything, but it does seem like there's this weird renaissance slash rejuvenation of the format. Wyatt, as you mentioned, on the larger platforms, you've got people like Razor Fist. He's self-publishing pulp novels now. Uh, it's 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 multi-layered for me. I've always loved pulps. They've been a part of my life. My dad was a big pulp reader, and he had a giant wall of the reprint novels, but he also had some of the older magazines. And so it's, just like comics, they've always been a part of my life. And as far as like why now, I wanted to start the year off with something that would have quick turnaround. We've got two, maybe three major projects coming down the line this year. The Gods Fear Me 2, The Red Key, and depending on Raphael's schedule, maybe Deepwell 2. And those books aren't going to be fulfilling until early next year. So, knowing that heading into this year, I sat down and I looked at what I could do without having to depend on an entire creative team to help me bring something to print. And what made the most sense is like, okay, I know Jeff, and I like the work they did on the cover. I think is fantastic, and his black and white ink work is incredible as well. I know Jeff; he has a fast turnaround rate, so I could hire him to do maybe 15 to 20, spot illustrations, and as long as I hold up my end and finish the manuscript, which I'm on page 80 out of 112. um, this is something that within like 3 to 5 months, like I could have in readers' hands. So, I just wanted something that would kind of keep us out there in the ether while we worked on these larger projects.
Now, I've published books. This is one area where I've got some hands-on expertise.
Hmm.
When you say 112 pages, the manuscript isn't always what translates to the published page, because
Right.
you have different size pages. You're going to change the font. It's not going to be, Courier 12
Right.
as it is in a traditional manuscript. So, are you working in a pre-formatted manuscript so that you know that, hey, when I reach 112 here, it is 112 there because I'm typing around the spot illos and I'm
Yeah. I'm giving myself, like you said, with the illustrations, I'm giving myself wiggle room of say between like 10 pages or so. Um, we did we did the prequel novella for The Gods Fear Me. Um, and I have the prequel novella for Deep Well done, and we're starting to work on formatting with that. So I kind of have it down at this point, like, type size and, illustration placement, all that stuff. And I kind of know that within about like a 10-page radius of how big this book is going to be. But the manuscript itself will be 112 pages.
all right. So, this will go faster than your traditional comic because you don't have pages of artwork to wait for each time.
Right.
You're not relying on someone. You are going to have somebody else do the spot illustrations, or are you going to be doing those yourself in house?
Yeah, no, that's going to be done by Jeff Lasley. He's the cover artist, and yeah, like I was saying, his black and white, pen work is really, really solid. So he's agreed to do somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 illustrations, depending on complexity. And it's it basically boils down to about, call it 5 to 6 pages worth of sequential art. So that's not a lot of time commitment on his end.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, Jimmy DeLorche in the house. RJ, next time we see each other, we really should be shaved again. Yeah, I kind of lost control of it. It was always just this little, thing here around my mouth, and suddenly I kind of quit. My hair finally got long enough on the top to start laying over. Yeah, I've got let me sell you a used car later. I'm set up for that now. That would be fun if we both shaved and did that. Yeah.
I know you won't have any context to this, but when we first hopped on together, you with the rocking the full beard, you remind me a lot of a friend of mine that runs a comic shop out here. I was like, did I hop on the wrong stream? What is going on?
Yeah, that was always the one of the retirement plans was like take over a comic shop and run it. And I was like, yeah, that's first of all, hiring me to run a comic shop is like hiring Cookie Monster to run a bakery.
Exactly.
It would not end well.
Right.
But I knew people who ran comic shops, and I knew what they went into, the headaches they had running it. It's like, yeah, that's not a way to retire. But now that I'm in the shipping side of things, I'm like, yeah, let's grow this thing. I like doing this. Sure. This is, I can let my brain turn to jello because I'm just like, book goes in the box. The book goes in the box. The book goes in. I'd be like, I'm happy as one of those guys on an assembly line at Chrysler's. You want next one,
right?
Just do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, comic shops. That's the thing where when you're in like your teens and your 20s, you're like, oh, that's the dream job. I just want to do that and make comics, and that'll be my whole life. And then, you actually start to get to know the industry and get to know what it takes to like run a comic shop specifically. And you're like, oh no, I'm good. Yeah.
You're talking about, going to the community college at the very least to get some business classes under your belt, learning how to report taxes every 3 or 4 months, whatever it is.
Right.
Hire people, HR. It's a business. It just happens to be selling something you really, really like.
Right. Right. And it rests entirely on your shoulders.
Yeah. And you have to deal with customers. Mike comes on the LCS guys show, and he's always got a nightmare story to tell us. He ran comic stores for 40 years.
Yeah.
And he's always like, I had a guy just like, walked around the store, grabbed a stack of books, found a chair, sat down, opened the first one, kicked back.
Oh no.
And he had to tell him, he's like, hey, the metaphorical, hey, this isn't a library, kid, was really, and the guy said, oh, I can't. Well, then I'll just go take my business elsewhere. And he said, well, please do, so you don't, bend up the comics that other people want to buy.
Oof.
And
okay.
He said the guy left, and everybody just in the store just kind of clapped because they didn't want him either.
The one example of, and then everyone clapped that actually happened.
Yeah, exactly. It usually happens when you get rid of a real butthole.
Sure.
Pops Van Zant in the chat. Welcome, Pops. Haven't seen you around in a while. I know you've been down with not the coof, but certainly some sort of flu. We'll just call it the flu bug.
Right.
We do have the campaign here. I'm going to bring that up. First, I'm going to run the teaser video because
sure.
you went through the trouble of making one. So let's show it off.
Yeah, please.
And tomorrow I'm going to have to go in and mute that whole segment because YouTube will find wherever the music came from and tell me that I can't use it.
Oh, well, I mean, I with all my trailers, I make sure that it's royalty free, so it shouldn't be an issue.
I've had royalty-free trailers a lot. They always come up because you know what happens? As soon as somebody else on YouTube uses that royalty-free music, YouTube goes through and says, oh, we see this music being used elsewhere on this copyrighted video, therefore you are violating copyright.
Okay.
It's not a perfect system yet.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I learned all of that from George Peter Gatsis, who does all these public domain movies, and he still has to tweak them so that they get past the YouTube copyright catching thing. Because again, somebody takes a segment of a public domain movie and puts it in their stream, new copyright on just that segment.
That's crazy. Okay,
it's very crazy. So here's the first image we get of LONGSHADOW. It's the only image I guess we get of LONGSHADOW.
Yeah, so for now, you know, I'm going to be updating the campaign over the coming days and weeks, and there'll be more and more art as I get stuff in from Preston Acevedo is going to be doing an alternate cover, so that'll be up soon.
This is right up his alley.
Yeah. I got something planned for him. It's going to be incredible. You guys are going to like it. And Jeff, the only reason that, some of the spot illustrations aren't up is as soon as Jeff finished the cover, he got saddled with another commission, so he hasn't had time to sit down and like work up 2 or 3 of those. But those will be up too.
All right. So how have you prepared to write a pulp, and have it sound like a pulp in your head when people read it?
Sure. Well, so you know, like one of the, so I don't want to say I had this master plan. It kind of like all fell into place, just I guess by chance. The reason I started doing the prequel novellas for our comic book campaigns was I wanted something to accompany the main book that served, as kind of additional lore building. But, I didn't want to further drag down the wait time on the campaigns by, waiting for additional sequential art, be it from the main artist or hiring a new one to do the prequel. So I was like, okay, well, I can just do these like mini novellas that are like light pulps. They're only about 36 pages. And thanks, Ellen. So, like my training wheels ended up being those prequel novellas, which we're going to keep doing for like all the other campaigns. And by the time that I was done and had the final draft of the Gods Fear Me one, I felt confident enough that I was like, okay, if I wanted to like do a pulp once a year, just which I might do, like assuming that the readership is there and we can get this funded, I'm happy to do a LONGSHADOW campaign every January for the next 9 years. Like I've got 3 trilogies planned out. I felt confident that I could execute basically a short novel in a condensed amount of time. And from there, it was just, refreshing myself on what pulp was. Like towards September of last year, I got my hands on the complete collection of Solomon Kane. So I worked my way through that thing and, I was like, okay, I think I got this.
Okay, so as an ogre private detective, this is sort of like, if Raymond Chandler decided to write high fantasy.
Basically, yeah.
And which is intriguing in and of itself. I think the only person who's ever attempted stuff like that is Terry Pratchett.
Yeah.
With his Discworld stuff, because that was a sort of a high fantasy world that had all these modern jobs in it.
Right.
So kind of like the Flintstones.
Yeah. And, so, besides pulp being one of the influences, I also over the past like year and a half got like really reintroduced to giallo. For anyone that doesn't know what that is, giallo is it's European traditionally Italian crime films, and the reason they're called giallo is because back when pulps were a thing in America, over in Europe, they would do these short crime novels with yellow covers with red circles, um, and those were called giallo because giallo is Italian for yellow. So they had their equivalent of pulp over there, and then that kind of like grew into this subgenre of film. Um, and so I kind of meshed those two things together, and I'm like, okay, I kind of want to do a fantasy crime story where it's set in a high fantasy world. There's magic, there's all these fantastical creatures, but at its core it's a crime story. It's the story of this killer, and who would deal with that. And from there I just started thinking about Long Shadow, who in any RPG, be it tabletop or video game, like the Elder Scroll series, whenever you can do a character creation thing, I always make Long Shadow. Like he's my guy in every game that I play. So, he's been this character in my life for over 10 years now, and I just never the thought never occurred to like actually bring him into the world and make him a fully fleshed out character in something that I published.
So this would be a character that you know very well.
Yeah, yeah.
Has he always acted like this? I mean, has he always been a PI, or have you just kind of created the character and
Yeah.
morphed him to fit whatever environment was played?
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like when you're dealing specifically with high fantasy, the character has to be malleable because it's not always going to be, a murder or a crime that he has to like investigate. There's going to be other situations that he finds himself in. But kind of like if we're going back to like superhero and pulp tropes, kind of like the Shadow and Batman, um, that he's malleable in that way, and he can still fall back on the detective skills once or twice throughout the story to justify calling him a detective.
I will say that you can see the obvious giallo reference here because it's a
Yes.
yellow book with a big red circle.
Yeah.
So you didn't go for the whole, like the American pulp where it was like cover to cover, lurid watercolor
Right.
painting. Now, the other thing about the American pulps, at least, I can't speak to the Italian giallos, is most of those pulps, at least the ones I've read,
Mhm.
were all anthologies. I can't recall having read too many that were single stories, except in the smaller pocket paperback
Right.
pulp that were those were like direct Doc Savage novels and stuff like that.
Yeah, which even those, like the Doc Savages and the Shadows, and like the Conan novels, even those were mostly reprints, and they were, reprints of like serialized stories in, Amazing Stories or whatever, pulp magazine we're talking
Yeah.
about. So even that stuff wasn't fully, originally produced for that format.
To that end, is this going to be one single story novel in a pulp format, or?
Yeah, it's one story, beginning, middle, and end. If we get to do more, cool, and if we don't, you have a self-contained story that's kind of a slice of life, day in the life of Long Shadow. But again, if the audience is there, I have really, really big plans for this guy, and I'd like to do at least 9 volumes.
Okay. Being that it's marketed as a return to pulp,
Mhm.
pulp was more than just the style of story. The quick, type it out, pay by the word, guys making money writing stories. I don't know if it was Chandler or Dashiell or one of the guys, but it was basically, he's like, I'm not an author, I'm a writer,
Right.
because I'm
Right.
writing. Every word is a nickel. So I'm like a cash machine putting out nickels.
Mhm. Mhm.
But pulp was called that because to print that stuff, they got the cheapest paper they could, the pulpwood paper.
Right.
Are you going to do anything to make this actually look like a pulp? With like rough edge pages, sort of newsprint kind of paper. Because if you say I'm delivering a pulp and you get this perfect bound, perfect smooth sided, pure
I get
white
you.
snow pages, it
Sure.
won't have the same feel.
Sure. So that is the plan for when we go into second and third printings. But again, the truth is, this is a Comicsgate project, and there's a certain benchmark that you have to meet with Comicsgate products, and I wouldn't Chibi Comics wouldn't deliver anything less. So the first edition, which is always specifically just for the backers and our readers, is going to be pristine. It's going to be about 7.5 by 5.5. The size of like a novel or a manga, and it's going to be perfect bound, and it's not going to be high end paper stock, but it's going to be decent paper stock, especially compared to pulps. But when we get into like a second printing, yeah, I definitely would love to, and I have to talk to Peter Samedi about this. I would definitely love to go through his printing program if possible, and get a line of these done on newsprint.
Okay, so when you're talking 7.5 by 5.5, this my Kill Journal just unboxed it. This is traditional comic book size here. You're talking something more like this Destroyer novel here. So this is a totally new size then for a Comicsgate project. People are used to getting something they can bag and board. This is going to be something more for the library shelf.
Yeah, it's designed for the shelf, and if for anyone that backed The Gods Fear Me and ordered the prequel novella with it, that size is going to be the size of this book. It's just going to be way thicker.
Matt Barr, Rock and Roll Ninja, Knife Hand Blind Spot. No, for some reason I always say those two things together, and I always say it like I'm bored. Loves the story with Middles. I'm definitely with you there, sir. I think I just watched a movie on Netflix, and it had Unthinkable. That's the name of it. It was Unthinkable with Samuel L. Jackson, and it had no ending. I was like, that's not right.
Oh, don't tell me that. I actually just like a month or two ago picked that up on Blu-ray, and we haven't seen it yet.
Oh, no, get with me after you've seen the credits roll and tell me, wait, they didn't finish it.
Right. Okay. All right. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's and not finishing it is actually part of the story. So it'd be interesting to talk with somebody. I didn't know it was new. I saw it on Netflix. I'm like, I've never seen this Samuel L. Jackson thing before. I didn't remember going to theaters. I figured it was a direct to DVD thing.
Yeah.
But I just found out I got more streaming options than I knew about because I got my Spectrum bill in, and it says, "Yeah, hope you're enjoying your HBO Max." I'm like, I don't have HBO Max, and because my package has HBO, all I had to do is go to HBO Max and put in my Spectrum credentials, and I'm in.
Oh, so hey, well, welcome to the club, man. Yeah,
just caught up on Peacemaker last night, finishing up Titans today. It's
nice. Okay.
It's a good day to be a comics fan again.
Yeah, man. I know people like to dunk on HBO Max. Like, I agree that the UI and like a bunch of just quality of life stuff isn't the best with that platform. But in terms of like the amount of content on it, I think it's one of the better streaming platforms.
Yeah, the UI is still kind of shaky. I'm used to Netflix. Like if I go back from watching an episode, I expect to go back to, either the main menu or at least the menu of the season of the thing I'm watching. I went back to like nowhere. I'm like,
right.
What? I have to reload a lot.
Yeah, it'll bounce you like right back to the front page, and you're like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah, not cool. Frog G, hail Frog G. Glad to see you in the chat, sir.
Hail Frog G.
So this is Longshadow and the Prince of Echoes. So who is the Prince of Echoes, and what is his role in this story?
Sure. So that's cool that you're asking. Like, this hasn't been something that I really got to talk much about yesterday when we launched. So basically, the story is a vampire story. And I know when people say this, like you get a lot of eye rolls. I've certainly eye rolled when I've heard it, but I wanted to take a new approach to the concept of vampire storytelling. And so basically, the Prince of Echoes is a non-corporeal entity that requires a physical host. So, whereas in traditional vampirism, the vampire is stealing life, so to speak, through blood to keep himself going, the Prince of Echoes full on inhabits and drains the soul of whoever he possesses, and that host shell is now his form. So, playing on the idea of like an echo of an echo of an echo, he's this being that can kind of exist in perpetuity simply by taking over other people's bodies and, slowly killing them from the inside out.
Yeah, I, I'll say like the Ultra Humanite, but I can't remember the Denzel Washington.
Right. Yeah. Not Possession. I know the movie you're talking about.
Yeah, because like every time you touch somebody, the demon just kept transferring
Right.
back and forth to people.
Right.
Um,
Right. But now add the element of like, there's no hopping out. Like when he hops out into a new host, like that previous body is just it's meat. It's done.
Fallen.
Yeah. Fallen, there you go.
Yeah, that was a really good movie.
It was.
And it brings into mind the fact that here's a detective who's having to follow clues for a supernatural set of circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to ask you how you keep the reader engaged in a detective story where he's putting together clues when, the reader maybe, used to detective novels like, okay, I see this and this and this. I got motivation. I got clues that's left behind by this. But the reader has no real world, so to speak, context of this universe. Your detective seeing stuff and seeing it as residual of potions, magics,
Right.
Supernatural entities. So do you piece all that together, or is it more like the old pulp detectives where just one thing leads to another sort of thing, and ultimately Mr. Big brings you to him and you shoot him?
Right. It's going to be a bit of both. I'm heading into the kind of climax of the third act, and in terms of like where I'm at in writing production right now. And yeah, it's a mix of both. It's initially Long Shadow is pointed in the direction of, what this thing is and where it is, and he kind of has to figure the rest out on his own. He knows, okay, this thing is in Old Country, which, without going on too much of a tangent, like Old Country is basically where the initial kingdom of Elos was before there was this giant war, and the whole land was just left dead. The way I describe it is what existed there still exists, but nothing new can grow. There's a whole chapter with a father and a son who still live in Old Country, and the son is determined to make new life grow in Old Country, but nothing grows. Something happened in this war that effectively locked Old Country in time and space, and nothing new can exist. So the rest of the kingdom kind of migrated westward throughout the rest of the continent. So Long Shadow is, pointed in the direction of Old Country, but once he actually gets there, that's when the detective work has to start. He's like, okay, I know Old Country, there's this tower, but I'm getting word that this thing doesn't have one specific shape. It's not, it's nothing that I can just grab and beat up, like I actually have to put thought and be clever in terms of hunting this thing down.
So tell me a little bit about the voice and the perspective used in this story, because a lot of the times when you read a Raymond Chandler novel, or at least listen to one on the radio,
Mm-hmm.
You get a very distinct voice for the hard-boiled detectives, and it's usually in first person.
Right.
So is this something that starts off with I was sitting in my office with my clodhoppers up on my desk, pulling a glass of mead out of the bottom drawer. It was going bad. When in she walked, all legs and fur and tail.
Right. I'm smart enough to know that my strong point when it comes to writing prose is third person, not first person. I run into an issue a lot where when I try writing in first person, it's hard for me to embellish or describe the world without specifically focusing it through that character's worldview.
Yeah.
Which I guess comes with being first person, but I like the freedom of third person where I'm basically telling you my interpretation of Longshadow and the world around him so that you can see the the compare and contrast between what he does and what actual reality is outside of his head. And as far as his personality goes, I'd say there's about 20% Hellboy in there. I like the idea of this like utilitarian workman-ish type character. And also he's smart enough to know, hey, I've got it better than most of my race. Longshadow, and this is something that we'll explore in later novels, he basically walked away from what the traditional life of an ogre is. Like he even describes at one point, I think in the first or second chapter, most ogres spend their lives living in abandoned castles or dungeons, waiting to prey upon random adventurers, or they live under bridges, or out in the wilderness, just like eating deer. And Longshadow's like, yeah, but we could do better. So he just kind of walks away from that life and tries to join the world of man and provide a service. And it turns out what he's good at is killing things and hunting things. So he kind of becomes a detective before there were really detectives.
And of course, I imagine he runs into a lot of reluctance because, oh my God, an ogre.
Yeah. So, like the kingdom of Elos takes up a whole continent. And he's had a hard time finding his way across it. But let's say for the better part of 8 to 10 years, he's been living in this small village called Colon Brick. And in Colon Brick, he's come to get the trust of the townspeople, and they even give him his own private table at the back of the tavern called Amberglass. And there's a small mountain just outside of town called Master Point. It's towards the center of the map, actually. And what they allowed him to do is the lore that I built up for ogres is ogres culturally hand carve their own homes. So over the past 8 to 10 years, Longshadow has built kind of this Zorro slash Shadow slash Batman hideout cave complex within Master Point, and that's his lair.
So still sort of resorting back to traditional ogre behavior, but applying it toward. So Amberglass is the bar where the murder is going to take place, and I'll be honest with you here. As soon as I saw a murder in amber before I even read the glass part, I'm like, oh, it's a Zelazny novel.
Yeah. Well, so the A Murder in Amberglass is the prequel novella. So specifically, what this is going to be is Longshadow's first night arriving in Colon Brick and visiting Amberglass. And Sweet Alice, who's the lovely lady on the cover, Sweet Alice is the barkeep, and they immediately don't get along at all. And within, call it a half hour of him arriving, there's a murder in Amberglass, and of course everyone's eyeing him because he's a 7-foot-tall ogre. Of course you did it. So it's kind of a locked room mystery with him having to not only solve a murder, but also gain the trust of an entire town.
So obviously solving that murder would put him in the somewhat good graces of the town. Says, oh, he actually helped us out.
Right. Well, I mean, spoilers, 10 years later, he has his own table in the back. So
yeah. Hang a shingle, have an office, but find me in the bar.
Yeah,
it's where I'll do most of my. Does that where he does most of his business, back at the bar?
Yeah, it is. It's that's where you go when you need help. You go to the back of the bar and you'll see LONGSHADOW sitting there, his tall form kind of covering up the entire back wall.
All right. Well, is this the same artist who's doing the cover here? Because this is some excellent stuff. Spot illustration.
Oh, thank you. No, that's me.
That's you?
Yeah,
Why are you hiring artists?
because I'm also smart enough to know I am a slow artist, man. Combined with my day job where like I do design work and freelance illustration for, mostly people outside of comics. That takes up most of my time and I'm just slow, man. If I did a book, it would never come out. So that's why I hire artists.
Well, this is some really good stuff here. You should send, maybe do the pencils and send them off to somebody like Preston to paint over or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's an idea. I do like Preston's paint work.
I'm not trying to get rid of Mr. Lasley here because I like him too. We've been interacting a lot on Twitter, but
yeah, Jeff's a good guy.
So obviously not a lot of tiers to choose from for something that's going to be a prose novel with some spot illustrations.
Right.
You've got your swag bag here, which is the featured tier, $50. You get a copy of the book, the novella, the trading card. Is that the cover repro, or you have different art for that?
I think I'm going to come up with different art for it. Either I'll do it or I'll commission Jeff. And yeah, it's going to. I'm kind of taking Ethan's approach where the cards aren't contained to each campaign. It's just one giant chibi trading card set. So, the first ones that we did were for Gods Fear Me, and those were 1, 2, and 3. The Deep Well cards are going to take us to 8. And so this will be 9, I believe.
And so they're numbered so that if it's as part of a set, it makes people who are OCD kind of collectors, because we are,
You're right.
Say, oh crap, I got to go back and get these other campaigns so I can get these other cards.
There you go.
And finish it up. You'll also get a map of the Elos, the map that we saw earlier. Get that as a print.
Mm-hmm.
A LONGSHADOW sticker. Will that be a chibi sticker, or is that going to be
art sticker? I'm deciding. I mean, the tradition in CG is to have 6 a.m. do it, and if we hit our stretch goal and get to do that world guide, 6 a.m. has agreed to do a piece for that. So depending on how that turns out, that may just be the sticker. I haven't decided yet.
All right. And of course, you'll get the cover as a mini poster. So that's everything. That's the whole kit and caboodle for only $50.
Yep.
If you just want the book, $20. $20 for the book. No frills. No. I didn't see any stretch goals as I went down here. Have they not been decided yet, or are you just?
I listed towards the bottom by the map. I think our main focus in terms of stretch goals is if we can hit 8K. Some of your favorite artists in CG, like I mentioned, 6 a.m., Stefani Renee, Donald DeLay, Narwhal, a bunch of other people have all signed on and agreed to help me produce a world guide to LONGSHADOW that's going to have the look and feel of old D&D monster manuals.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Now, as a guide, is it going to actually have stats for these characters if you wanted to role play them, since LONGSHADOW is sort of making the jump from your role playing games?
Right. Yeah. I'm doing my research. I'm digging through old monster manuals. It's going to be as close to a monster manual as I can produce.
All right. Very cool. Now you can also get the Chibi Pack, which is going to be LONGSHADOW, and we talked about going back and getting the other books. You can get the Gods Fear Me book 1, and 1 copy of Samurai and Dinos, which is not what I was expecting the thing to be, but yeah, that's definitely a cool 3-pack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as long as we have first printing copies of all this stuff. As we move from campaign to campaign, I'm just going to keep the Chibi Pack going, and it's just going to keep growing. So, by the time we get to the Red Key in summer, there should be these 3 books plus LONGSHADOW. So that'll be like a nice 4-pack, and you can just get completely caught up on all of our stuff.
unless you run out, because I noticed you've only got 4 available on this.
Yeah,
I assume
yeah,
that was because you only had 4 copies of something.
yeah, of Samurai. Yeah, we're running low.
All right. For $150, you can get the original art that is being used for the map of Elos.
Mhm.
Elos. And that is, I was looking to see if there was a size on it, but I'm sure that you didn't draw it on a postcard.
No, it's 11 by 17. Both that and the amber glass cover are 11 by 17.
Yeah. So the and that this is also the original art for this one. This art's not finished, by the way. It says work in progress. So I'm assuming that
Yeah,
this isn't what your work is going to be. If you buy that tier, it's going to be the finished inked and stuff.
yeah. So I just before I hopped on with you, I finished the art for the interior of the circle, and I'm probably going to spend tonight inking it all up, and hopefully by tomorrow night I can have a colored version of it on the campaign.
Okay. Oh, so this is going to be another yellow background, red circle.
Yeah.
Keep it up.
Yeah, and when we get to Preston's alternate cover, like just to keep the format, like it's going to be yellow with the red circle.
I love it when books stay with a trade dress.
Mm-hmm.
Watch those spines.
Right.
We if you put the red circle at the top of 2 of those books and at the bottom of that 3rd one, we will hunt you down.
No, that ain't happening, man.
we like our books to line up on the shelf nice.
I get you.
And you can also get that main original cover art. Jeff's cover art here. Now, his cover art's not colored, surely.
Yeah. So Jeff was kind enough. Like I asked him about it, and he agreed to sell the original piece, and it's fully painted. I'm not sure.
But like even down to the yellow background.
Yeah.
Okay.
I told him he didn't have to. I'm like, I can just drop that in Photoshop. Like, you can just do the interior circle and long shadow. And he's like, no, I'm just going to paint the whole thing.
Oh, perfect. Is it going to be virgin, or is it going to have the logo actually on it and stuff?
No, it'll just be virgin. Like,
Okay.
Yeah, it's just going to be the yellow, no font text.
No text on it. Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. Do you know the size of it? You've obviously had it in your hands, so.
Yeah, not yet. I know it's probably around 11 by 17. He just mailed it out to me 2 days ago, so I should have it sometime next week.
All right, $250. Probably in the future going to be adding more tiers as you get more art.
Yeah. So Preston had to finish some stuff up. Like he's been showing off that alternate cover he just wrapped up.
Yeah.
So Preston,
there will never be another Doc Salem book, by the way. Preston is too busy doing work for everybody else. So
yeah, I mean, look, since The Gods Fear Me, I told him, I'm like, you're our alternate cover guy, man. So as long as he's happy to keep working with us, there will always be a Preston cover for each campaign. So he's going to get started on that sometime. Excuse me. He's going to get started on that sometime in the next week or so. So that'll be up. And yeah, once Jeff finishes up his other commitments, I'll have him start working up the spot illustrations, and we'll post a couple of those on the campaign too.
Okay. Question from the chat, and I probably know the answer. You said the book itself is like 7.5 by 5. Do you know the page count and size of the prequel?
Sure. So it's probably going to match the Gods Fear Me and Deepwell prequels. It's going to come in at 36 pages.
Okay, but this will be 36 pages of prose, not 36 pages of panels and such, because it's a prose novel.
Right. Right. And I mean, there'll be, panels in there, but it's prose.
Oh, right. So yeah, Frog G, get in there and get the prequel package when you pick up when you throw money at this thing, which we want you to do, of course.
Yes.
While people are throwing money at this, and by the way, if you want to do that, the link for this project is right below the video, right down there, very first thing you see. If you're watching it live right now, it's pinned to the top of the chat over there. You can get to it either direction. So please do that. And while people are throwing money at it, I need to make a little bit of a public service announcement here because I said that I would. We have some folks who are helping us get guests on the show. And that is the Inked Marketing team. Inked Marketing and NSC Live TV are proud to present the NSC Roadshow Podcast Tour. As a creator, come be treated like a rock star as we take you on tour with podcasters worldwide, expanding your audience base with each show. Got a crowdfunding project you would like to tell thousands about? Come get on the tour. Are you a podcaster that would like more creators on your show? Come get on the tour. Visit nscroadshow.com. And I am a member of the NSC Roadshow Tour, so whenever we have that going, we'll have that little logo standing up in the corner of the video instead of, the one we normally have, or that one. So you'll know whenever we're doing an NSC Roadshow guest for that night. Now, this is the part of the show where I embarrass myself by reloading the page just to see. And we have also made it to our special moment in the show. Mike, and I don't know if you've been on the show when we've had this special moment before, but it goes something like this.
It's shake and bake, and I help.
It's our shake and bake moment, and we had people in the chat who helped get this thing closer to goal. You are at $320 now, sir.
That's excellent. Yeah, I see Frog G down there. Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Frog G, and whoever else might have been in the chat who decided to back this project. If you like to read pulp action stories, they're not making many more of them. So
yeah. I mean, I had the realization like a night or two before we launched. I know that as a publisher, I take a lot of hard swings. Like I know when we launched Deep Well, it was before Graham launched his Western. There weren't a lot of Westerns, and it was at times kind of an uphill battle to win over an audience specifically for that format and genre. And
but then suddenly there were a lot of Westerns.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I'm hoping it's the same case with this. I know CG and crowdfunding in general, like the specialty is comics. I get it. I just think that the format and the combination of words with illustrations as opposed to just straight up sequential artwork makes for this really kind of beautiful package that we don't see that much anymore. And if you're willing to go on that journey with me, I'm happy to keep turning these out once a year. And as long as Jeff's happy to keep working with me, you'll keep getting more and more gorgeous artwork from him.
Fantastic. We're taking a step backward from the pulp novels that you're doing here. We're not even including pictures in ours. We are, as Critical Blast Publishing, yet another arm of this giant umbrella. We are doing the sequel to last year's The Devil You Know anthology, which was stories of people's encounters with the devil, whether they be contracts or coffee or just bumping into him on the street somewhere. With The Devil You Know Better, we are reading through the end of March, and we are going to be crowdfunding a special edition of this one because we are going to be including stories from Mike Barron and Hart Fisher in this. So we are going to crowdfund a version of the book that will come with a signed, a signature card that you can, actually stick in the book if you so desire, or leave it loose. The book is being published either way. This is just something that, hey, let's do a version of it on crowdfunding to allay costs. We're not going to do that until the books are sent to the printer. So we can just order more copies of the books and then have the cards signed, pass them through the post office, and get them out to you once that's done. More on that, obviously, as we get closer to time. We're still reading through the end of March, and then it'll be a month of, formatting and kerning. That's a word I learned.
Yep.
Kerning's not easy to do in Microsoft Word. You either have left justify, right justify, or full justified.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, man. We do all of our formatting either in Manga Pro or Photoshop, just because I can't deal with kerning in any other program.
Oh, how I'll figure that out. The real fun is when you have authors come in who you've seen the format before, and it's commonly used. Where it's like a paragraph ends a scene, and they want to go to the next scene, but it's not a next chapter. especially when it's a short story thing. So you put that little octophone
Right.
right there in the centered middle. You know where that thing always lands? Right at the bottom of a page or at the top of a page.
Yep.
Guaranteed. That's
Every
where
time.
it's going to go.
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. Like you want
you
it
gotta
to be
add some spaces in there to make that thing go to where it you see it, so you shift. Otherwise,
Right.
your brain passes right over it, and you're like, "What?"
right.
Totally
You like in your head, you're like, all right, this is gonna fall like right in the middle of the page. It's gonna be mwah. Nope, always right at the bottom.
always right at the bottom. I don't know what it is about it, but
Yep.
It's just the way luck runs. And then of course I've got to I had to pulp a small run, thankfully.
Mm.
I had two issues that happened with the last book. The first one was I was like, okay, it's all done, proofread to hell, sent it off, and somebody bought it within minutes, because one of the authors was like, yeah, I've got it. And then they stopped production. I'm like, why'd they stop production? And then the guy who bought it said, here's why they stopped production. They didn't bother telling me, but I had said it was a 5x7, and I sent them an 8x6. So the words were like going off the top and bottom, left and right. It was just because it doesn't wrap. It's like literally printing onto the pages.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, fix that, send it off again. Had a free redo kind of thing. And it's like, yes, all the pages are great. I got them in, I packaged them up, I sent them off to the authors. Literally, they're in the mail. And I kick back and I'm like, finally, I can read this book. And on every book, I had, the title would start on the odd page. You turn the page, there's the author's name at the top, there's the title at the top. And I'm like, yes, this is perfect. I get halfway through the book and I start the new story and I turn the page and there's the previous author's name at the top and there's the previous author's story at the top for the next 3 stories. I'm like,
oh no.
Fixed that. That was a $40 mistake.
Yeah.
So if you've got misprint ones, and then of course for the 3 authors that it happened to, I sent them another author's copy because your name should appear at the top of your own story. I think that's important. So we know what not to do this time around, what things to look for, which means we'll hit completely new issues. Have you? Obviously, you get the proof copy of all your other books. Has anything gotten past you in the past like that, where you just like, I threw the book across the room? I was so mad.
Yeah. I mean, look, every campaign's a learning experience, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you've been doing this like for 1 year or 20 years. Like, there's always going to be something, be it an error or like a learning curve. There's always going to be something to figure out and overcome. And yeah, like we've definitely had issues with stuff that's gotten past us. Thankfully, this last time around with the Gods Fear Me, we got the proofs in and they all looked incredible. But yeah, like, I'm always like on the edge of my seat whenever those proof copies are in the mail.
Yeah, because it's like you read it and you read it and you read it and it looks good. And it's not until you get the final proof that you're like, oh crap.
Right. Or you get the final copy and mail it out to like a friend, and they're like, "Hey, do you know this?" And then they just start laughing. You're like, "Oh no!"
The worst I ever saw that happen was with a book I got from Scholastic, hardcover, graphic novel, thick hardcover graphic novel, and I had trouble reading this section. I'm like, this doesn't make sense because I know this writer. He's excellent. He's Alan Moore level excellent writer. It's Jimmy Gownley.
Okay.
I was like, this makes no sense. This is the worst flashback I've ever seen. And then I figured out, oh, these 2 pages are in the wrong order. And if I read it like that, oh, then it's perfectly flows great. So I wrote back to the PR guy who, gave me the book. I was like, hey, you need to look at these 2 pages here because they are definitely out of sequence before you go to press. And he wrote me back, says, you're right. We're going to fix that. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. So like, I felt that was my shake and bake moment. I helped. So I have Jimmy on a stream, later in the year. We're talking about the book, and we end up in the after show, and I was like, he's like, yeah, I got this, and he's like, yeah, I got my copy too. I was like, oh, is that the ARC copy that they but with the pages reversed? He's like, oh, that was you. Apparently, that was not an advanced reader copy.
Oh,
that was the order comes through to pulp 40,000 copies of the hardcover book.
That's painful.
To reprint. I was like, oh, I hope some junior editor didn't lose a job.
the weirdest misprint I've seen within the whole indie scene / CG is I won't name the book or the creator, but basically I got my copy and I started reading it, and about 8 pages in, all of a sudden the next page was page 1 again. And I was like, is this like a time loop thing? Is this intentional?
It's the Tomorrow War.
Right. And so I go like a couple pages further, and like, no, like the first 8 pages right in the middle of the book were just reprinted twice over. And the weirder thing was he had no idea about that. And, he writes back like 3 hours later, and he's like, I've found like 20 of those. Like, some of them have it, some of them don't. So it's this weird thing where even though it's part of one print run, so in theory they should all be messed up, only about like in total 40 or 50 of these things were.
Yeah. I had a similar one for one I shipped, and the writer said, hey, look for this to happen because it's like random. Mm-hmm. They were printed completely backwards.
Wow.
And this was a perfect bound book. And what I found out happens is, you get people in the printer shops, they print out all the pages. And because it's perfect bound, they're not saddle stitched. They're not like, they're edged on both sides. It's loose sheets. Mm-hmm. And if the guy's not paying attention, he picks it up, he puts it in the perfect, bound cover wrong. And he puts the wrong edge in there. And now your book is backwards.
Okay.
So they were like, he found like half a dozen before he shipped them to me. Mm-hmm. And I found, 4 or 5 of them here that I had, it was easy to tell because the very last page was fan art. So if I opened up the book and I saw fan art, I'm like, yep, pulp that one.
Right. Right.
But the lessons that you learn in the publishing industry, and we're all getting into it now because the technology allows it.
Being a publisher is fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun. It's very fulfilling.
It is. I mean, it's when Selena and I first committed to it, like, all right, we're just walking away 100% from trying to get, picked up by a publisher. We're just doing it all ourselves. I anticipated that all this stuff, from like formatting and printing issues to fulfillment, that I was going to hate, that it was just going to be like, nails on a chalkboard. And, maybe it's age and maturity, but like each facet of getting the book complete, from like writing it to seeing the pages come in to printing and fulfillment, I kind of appreciate every step, even the monotony of book, envelope, because like I know like each one of those that goes out, like there's a chance like I'm gonna get like a cool photo of someone being like, I got it, like, and that's rewarding and fulfilling in its own way.
Yeah, that's the best. I mean, I know there's people who don't like that because that's what keeps me in business.
Right.
The fact that I did it for overseas guys, and I started getting domestic, and I was like, I'm not saving you any money. In fact, I'm costing you money. Like, I don't want to do it.
Right.
Right. But I sit on top of pirate ship as soon as the mail lady leaves with the box, I log in. And it's like, label waiting to be scanned, scan. Yes. And then it's like, as soon as I see things start to be marked as delivered, I go to Twitter and I start, searching the hashtag, see who's opening it. Right. It's not even my book.
Right.
But I want to see the unboxings.
Yeah, it's great, man. So, it is time consuming, and there are aspects that can be a pain, but we're in this for the long haul, and there's nothing else that I want to do with my life.
You're going to be a publishing company till the end.
Yeah.
And that's, that's how every single mainstream publisher was at one point an indie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when National Comics first came on the scene, there was no National Comics before that. There was no superhero comics and all that stuff. It was all new. So, it was self-publishing.
Right.
It had to be. They had their own money, but they weren't owned by anybody but themselves. So it was their money being put into the books that they were producing to sell. And it just so happened that they were selling millions of them and raking it in. So
right.
Let's do that again. Let's get to the point where that can happen.
That's the plan, man.
Yeah, Mike, thank you so much for bringing Long Shadow onto the show tonight. Appreciate you being on here.
Thanks for having me, man.
And I know you got another show to get to real quickly here. So where should people bounce to see you next?
So at 5 Pacific time, so that's 8 Eastern, I'll be hanging out with Mandy and a couple other creators.
Oh, excellent. That's always a fun show. Love having her on my show. Got to do it again sometime soon.
Yeah, Mandy's the best.
Yeah. All right. Everybody in the chat, appreciate you being here. As I always say, we don't have a show without you. And as always, we just hope you had a blast. Good night.